Take charge of your thoughts. Take charge of your life. Psychologist, author, speaker, musician, former professor, and the host of Love and Life, Dr. Karen Anderson-Abril.
Welcome to Love and Life. I'm Dr. Karen Anderson-Abril. Have you ever admired someone's career and thought, how did she do it? What was her journey like? How did she make it happen? That's what I wondered when I first met Chicago's Showbiz Shelly. She's the go-to entertainment expert throughout Chicago, and I always wondered what her career path looked like. So when I created my occasional series about women making it happen in their careers, I knew I wanted to invite Shelly to share her story. Talk about making it happen. Shelly basically created a career for herself, one that pretty much didn't exist until she decided to make it exist. And Shelly's here to share her journey and provide inspiration for you as you make it happen in your career. Just a little bit more about Shelly. Showbiz Shelly is the midday host and entertainment reporter for Chicago's 103.5 KISS FM. She also joins Fred and Angie each morning for her popular Showbiz Showdown segment. Shelly graduated from Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism with a degree in broadcasting. And over the last 13 years as an entertainment reporter, Shelly has interviewed actors, musicians, and sports stars, including Jennifer Lopez, Justin Bieber, Angelina Jolie, Michael Jordan, and John Travolta, just to name a few. Her entertainment pieces regularly appear on CBS, ABC, Fox, NBC, WCIU, and WTTW. When she's not covering the entertainment beat, you can find Shelly doing yoga, watching some of her favorite TV shows, pretty much any reality show, especially The Bachelor, Chicago Fire, This Is Us, or she's playing beach volleyball in the summer. There's a lot more to Shelly's story, but I'll let her share that with you herself in the following interview. Shelly, welcome to the program.
Hi, Karen. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time today. I want to let the listeners know a little bit about your background, but also how we connected. We connected kind of randomly. It was just a couple of years ago for that really awesome movie, How to Be Single. And I think my publicist at the time reached out to you, and you were doing a screening of it, which you do a lot in Chicago for a lot of cool movies. And because obviously How to Be Single was right up my alley, we were able to connect, and we did like a little kind of Q&A before the film was shown. And it was a lot of fun. And I was just glad to meet you. And I have to let you know, I didn't tell you this at the time, but when I was mentioning to my niece, who's in her 20s, I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing this screening thing with Showbiz Shelly. She's like, Showbiz Shelly? Are you kidding me? She was all excited.
That is so funny. We'll tell her thank you so much. And yeah, it's funny because I remember that day very well because that was a really fun screening. And then, yeah, I remember meeting you and thinking, she's so cool. And like you had so much good stuff to say. And so then I think from there, we just kind of followed each other on social and took off from there. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we connected, kind of reconnected on Instagram. Yeah. And then here you are today. So again, thanks so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
I've always admired your career, and it's always occurred to me, I've always wondered, how did you become Showbiz Shelly? Like, it's kind of random. And so I have this occasional series called Women Making It Happen in Their Careers. When I came up with that idea to have that series, I thought of you right away because to my mind, you came up with an idea of like, this is what I want to do. I want to be the go-to source for pop culture and entertainment in Chicago. And then how in the heck did you make that happen?
No, it's a good question. And like a lot of people have said, oh my gosh, like what you've done is like a one in like million thing.
Yeah.
And it is in a way, but it also was a lot of hard work and it was a lot of sacrifices. I mean, I knew, like, just to give you a little backstory on me, I grew up in the Chicago area. I grew up in the north suburbs, and I had actually a radio show in high school at New Trier High School, and I just did it for fun with friends. I mean, growing up, I'm like just naturally more on the quiet, shy side. So doing this radio show with a few friends, it was just like kind of a fun thing to do like after school. And I think we had like a radio show during like our lunch period or something. And then I went on to Northwestern, and at Northwestern, I became involved with the TV station there. But while I was in high school, I mean, it was just like my thing. Every day I'd come home and I'd either watch Saved by the Bell or TRL or Full House. And like at the time, I remember I had a phase where I was particularly obsessed with Total Request Live. Like I would go home and Carson Daly was on, and I thought to myself, gosh, I love the idea of getting to interview all these musicians who I love and all these celebrities who I watch on TV and who I look up to. And I would love to do that one day. And there was something that fascinated me about the idea of sort of being a small little part of what was going on in the world. And so when I went to Northwestern, I majored in journalism, which is kind of along that same idea. And I took a lot of classes doing hard news and covering, a lot of the serious stories. And it just never meshed with my personality. It wasn't quite right. And so when I would do the more lighthearted entertainment stuff, for me, that was always, I don't know, I just always kind of knew that was like my niche. That's where I wanted to be. And so I ended up doing, like I said, I majored in television at Northwestern, and then I ended up becoming like the head of the arts and entertainment TV station there, because we had like a TV station and we'd had stuff that would air locally there. And so I became sort of the head of the arts and entertainment part of that. And I just always kind of knew, I was like, there was never like, well, if this doesn't work, I'm going to do this. It was just always my plan. I want to be an entertainment reporter in some capacity and get to be a part of the pop culture world. I just loved it. Like I said, I was fascinated by it. And so I got I want to say it was my sophomore year of college. I applied to be an intern at another radio station, which I don't know if I'm allowed to say anymore, but I worked there as an intern in the promotions department just for a summer. I was handing out keychains. I was handing out T-shirts. I was going to events at, local festivals or whatever. And then from there, I'm at the night show at the time, Styles and Roman, and they were really cool. I really enjoyed doing promotional events with them. And so I reached out to them and I said, hey, if you guys are ever looking for an intern for your regular radio show, I'd love to be considered. And sure enough, they were looking for somebody. And so I ended up interning with them. And I always knew too that just having that experience doing the on-air stuff at New Trier on my radio show, I always kind of knew that was more the path I wanted to go. And then getting the experience I was at Northwestern, I always kind of knew that was the direction that I wanted to head in. So with them, I ended up I was answering phone calls. I was getting them food. It was just, like regular sort of intern duties. And I interned with them. It was supposed to be like a quarter-long internship. I think I ended up interning for them for about a year and a half. Something around there because, it was just we got along so well and I loved it so much. And so I was going to school during the day and then I'd go to their show at night and do my internship. And then at one point I studied abroad in Spain and I didn't, I was still interning for them. And actually, I'll back up a little bit. So I was interning with them, doing all sort of, the regular intern duties. And then I got asked, they said, hey, we know how much you love pop culture. We know how much you enjoy talking about celebrities and entertainment. Would you want to do a short segment on our show? And I was like, oh my God, yeah. And at this point, I was, I believe, a junior at Northwestern. And so every Monday night I did Shelly's Street Talk, and I did that for a few months. And then I ended up traveling to Spain, and I studied abroad in Spain, and I didn't want to lose that spot because I was so grateful to have it. And I just started doing it. And so I actually ended up pre-taping a bunch of segments that they aired while I was in Spain because I wanted to make sure that, people, they were able to get the consistency. And then not too long after that, when I got back, the boss at the radio station, he had heard the segment one night driving home, and he brought me in and he said, "Hey, we're looking to bring some people in for the morning show. Would you like to join?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, absolutely." And so at that point, I was a junior in college and I was doing a morning show in Market 3, which doesn't happen too often. So I started the day before my 21st birthday. I'll never forget it. And I've been doing it ever since. It's the only job I've ever had. And it's obviously I've worked with many different shows. And then since then, it's the only station I ever worked for until I moved over to Kiss FM. And now I've been at Kiss FM for about a year and a half. So that's sort of how things played out. And I'm glad they did.
Yeah, well, I think Chicago's glad that it played out that way too. Well, and what I love is that it was really a lot of you just taking advantage of whatever kind of opportunity came your way and making the most of it. Like, started, I'm just passing out keychains and doing promo, but I'm making connections. I'm meeting people. I'm showing up and I'm hustling even when it's a job that seems at that point kind of far removed from the goal, but you're there, you're doing your best. And then by shining in that capacity, even though it wasn't quite what you wanted to do yet, you were able to make those connections and make a good impression.
100 billion%. Yeah. And that's what I tell people all the time is just get your foot in the door if you can somewhere, even if it's in the building that you want to be in, because you make the connections and you want to shine in whatever area you are working in and show to those people, hey, look, I'm going to, be the best that you absolutely need me to be. And you can rely on me and I'll be consistent, and that'll carry through. That'll make waves throughout the company or wherever you are. And, that's what I tried to do is like, hey, I'm going to be the best promotions intern I'm going to be. And then, Styles and Roman were like, oh, we heard you're good. Yeah, join our show. And then, okay, I'm going to be the best, night show intern I can be. And it just, it kind of, like you said, it worked out in my favor. And I think that's the other huge thing is just consistency and following through on things that you say you're going to do. I tell people all the time, and especially the younger kids who are always curious and sort of asking similar questions to you is, what is something I can do? Honestly, if you say you're going to send an email to somebody, do it, and it sounds so simple, but I find that for some people, it's not that simple. I don't know.
Yeah, I think oftentimes too, with the younger generation, they may see where you are now and not understand how much hustle was behind it, right? And especially on social media, they see these people who are like 17 years old and they're an influencer and they have 7.5 million followers and stuff. And so they may not understand that, that's kind of one in a million, but the rest of us, we have to go and hustle. Yep. And be true to our word. And also what I love is that you were yourself. You came in there and you didn't pretend to be like, well, what I really want to do is this and this, but really down deep, what you wanted to do was to do the entertainment stuff. You just let it be known. So then as you cultivated these connections and these relationships, then it was clear that, wait, that's Shelly's thing. She loves that. Hey, maybe we want to bring that on to the morning show. And so by you being yourself, being authentic, hustling, then you were able to demonstrate what you were about. And when that niche arrived, you were the shoe-in perfect fit, and you'd done your time and showed your work ethic and then been yourself, because I don't remember a Showbiz Shelly in Chicago before you. So you didn't, there was no really goal. It wasn't like you're like, I want to be Diane Sawyer. There was no one there for you to necessarily model yourself after, but you just knew in your heart what really got you excited. And so you stuck with it. And then now you are probably the role model for many other young journalists in the scene.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah. And it strikes me with two things you said. One, there's a quote I love, and I don't remember who said it, but it's something along the lines of, we're not afraid to start. We're just afraid to start small, and we're afraid for people to see us starting small. But the truth is we all have to start small in some capacity, meaning, you're not going to start your YouTube channel and then have 1 million followers right away. It's going to be a slow roll, and that's something that that stuck with me. And I think also, like you said, I was able to stick with it because, I just genuinely loved it. I wasn't trying to pretend to be something I wasn't. I did know that I always wanted to do entertainment. And so because I genuinely loved it, it was like, okay, if I start with just, a few dozen followers, it's okay because I still really like it. So I'm just going to keep doing it. And I think that is really important that's something even I'm still learning, is this idea of being authentic to yourself and being true to yourself and speaking your truth and letting it be known and that it's okay.
Yeah. And I think that's a lifelong journey that we all I think there are seasons in our lives when we feel that we can really resonate in our authenticity. And then there may be challenges where that seems harder for us to access. And maybe we don't feel safe to be our authentic selves in certain contexts. And I think it's something that we all struggle with. But I love that it's been part of your journey because it really helped you by being able to say, this is what gets me excited. This is really where my passion is. And you know what I love about entertainment in general is people could say, oh, it's not the hard, serious news. It's not politics. It's not the real world. But you know what it is? It's the place where people go when the real world has been too hard. They go to that movie, that chick flick. And for me, like I really don't even like heavy duty movies because I will just start sobbing hysterically and I'm just too hurt. And I'm like,
me too.
I'm like, the real world is like really hard enough. So when I go for that 2 hours with my popcorn and the surround sound, I want to laugh. I want to giggle. I want that escapism. And that is important because we need that because life is hard. And so what you are doing is bringing that spark of joy. It's very important. It's a huge important part of our lives. It's sometimes I think people minimize, but it is important.
Oh, yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And thank you for saying that because I agree with you that I think it is an escape for people. And I think the other thing too that I find with entertainment is it's also in a lot of ways, it's super relatable. I mean, I think the reason we're fascinated by all these people and all these celebrities, or at least for me, why I'm fascinated with a lot of them is because I think, compare our situations a lot of time to what these celebrities are going through. Whether they're having a breakup or their kids are going to college or with the Kardashians, I'm obsessed with them. And I don't care what people say because I find that so many of the things that they do on their show or that they talk about, it's like I fought with my sister about the same thing a few weeks ago, and it's like, and I think in a way it's a way to see that even though these people have a lot of money and they have what seems like a very glamorous life, they go through a lot of the same things that we do. And they also can fall and make mistakes like we do. And I think that's an important thing to note because I even know on, the radio shows that I've done when we talk about entertainment and if I do an entertainment report, it starts good conversation about, was this the right decision? Why did she break up with him? What wasn't that? I don't know. And I know you probably can relate to some stuff too with the relationship work that you do, but. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And my book is all about staying strong and not settling because the single life can be tough and you can get people looking at you like, what's wrong with you? So my listeners know that I'm all about that. And in fact, when you talked about celebrities being relatable, it made me think of, I do have a quote from Sheryl Crow because, I didn't get married until 42. So people were like, oh my gosh, are you too picky? Are you too this, that? What the heck are you too? And I remember I love Sheryl Crow anyway, because I love her music. I love her as a songwriter, but I also really identified with her because she is single. And I remember thinking, so you think there's something wrong with me that I'm single? Look at Sheryl Crow. Is there something wrong with her too? And there was. Yeah. And there's a quote that I found when I was doing research for the book where someone was saying to her essentially the things that many of us hear when we're single or when we're out of step with where society thinks we're supposed to be. And she said how she felt like, wow, people think there's something wrong with me. There's something fundamentally flawed that I'm doing that's keeping me single. And I remember thinking, but Sheryl Crow, you're kind of almost perfect. How in the world could there be something wrong with you? And it does. It's like you're saying, it really helps us understand that everyone goes through these same emotions and these same challenges in life. No one's exempt.
A lot of people I want to even say like Tracy Ellis Ross, I think, has talked about something similar. And, and imagine too, I mean, all of us, of course, have our little group of friends where maybe we feel a little bit ashamed or embarrassed when people say that type of thing. But these people, celebrities go through it they have millions and millions of people. Right. Sheryl Crow, feels that way in front of God knows how many. But while celebrities do have that big platform, they aren't that different from us. And that's what really fascinates me about, because you do kind of get down to that nitty gritty, like, hey, like I always try to ask questions that sort of bring them back down to earth a little bit. Like, yeah, you have this awesome movie, but like, I'm trying to think like a recent one. Oh, like John Travolta, I interviewed not too long ago. And one of the things I was like, you used to have sisters who lived in Chicago. Like, what was that like with your sisters, being here and not being able to see it? And he would sneak in, and he used to fly his planes here to see them. And that's the part I find fascinating, that even though we put these people on a pedestal, they're not that different from us.
Yeah. And I didn't know that about John Travolta. And I think that, of course, Chicagoans love to hear that he's got connections in the Chi. So he's got to be all right, kind of thing.
Yeah. And I also thought of, too, I remember, I thought of what you were saying about how you kind of compare when you do some of your relationship stuff and you talk about celebrities. I saw something you posted about like the people on The Bachelor. Like, I'm obsessed with The Bachelor.
Yes.
And that's for a similar reason, because even though people are like, well, it's so fake and it's not how real relationships work, I think regardless, there's still an element of, I've been through that. A guy has said something like that to me that, oh my gosh, I cried over the same thing about a guy. And so I love it for that reason.
Well, yeah. And they're just saying, whenever they go to those cuts too, where they're just talking to the camera, they're saying out loud those things that so many of us are saying in our own head, or like you said, are saying with a group of girlfriends, but maybe we're not out there saying it to the entire TV community, but we're feeling it, or we wrote it in our journal. But then my heart gets so pulled. I just want to go, oh, I wish I could talk to you right now, Haley.
Right.
I really want to comfort you. You are so beautiful and you're so cute and you're really young. You actually have lots of time. So yeah, but they don't feel like that. Yeah, because people feel what they feel when they feel it. And I can say, I'm in my 40s and I can say, Haley, don't rush it. You have so much time. But she's feeling that very genuinely at that moment. And again, it does make everything so relatable for sure.
No, absolutely. I know. And they're all like 24, 25. And it's like, oh my God, stop.
I'm like, I want to be like, the research shows the older you are at age of first marriage, the less likely you are to divorce. Right? So actually just take your time, get to know who you are, feel more secure and confident in who you are by yourself. And that will only make you a stronger partner for your eventual marriage. But I don't know. They haven't called me to say, do some commentary with The Bachelor. I don't think they ever would bring a psychologist. Thank you. I think so too. But I don't think they ever would, because I think they want them to kind of spiral out of control. No, they don't want someone to talk about.
I don't know if it's true. I've heard they have one behind the scenes kind of, but like you said, who knows how involved that person is. And I think that, they want them to spiral a little bit. So
just a little bit.
Yeah.
If you drink black coffee or hot tea, I know you've burned your tongue hundreds of times, or you've had to wait 20 minutes for your coffee to cool down, which by that time, your donut or muffin is long gone and you've missed the joy of pairing that sweet breakfast item with your bitter black coffee. If it sounds like I'm speaking from personal experience, I am. But I've got good news for us. Drink Perfection takes beverages from scalding hot to the perfect temperature, where you can actually appreciate the flavor notes, by the way, in just 20 seconds without watering them down. Learn more at drinkperfection.com. And be sure to check out the Perfector's other application, taking red wine from room temp to wine cellar temperature, again in just 20 seconds. Find out more at drinkperfection.com. So tell us some of your highlights, some of the most memorable portions of your career. Are there any interviews that really stick out, or ones that you think, wow, that was something I never thought I would get to that point, or something like that?
Oh my goodness. Pretty much there's a lot, just because, like I said, I was very quiet growing up. I still am very much an introvert, which surprises a a lot of people.
Yeah, sure.
I love what I do, but it takes a lot for me to do it, which surprises people. So, just the fact that I'm trying to think offhand, like I would say one of the first things that really stuck out to me as a massive sort of career milestone was, growing up, I would go to a lot of these concerts that the radio stations would put on, and I would be in the crowd, and, I'd buy a ticket like everybody else, and I would scream at my favorite acts. And then I remember the first time I actually, I was working at the radio station and they said, hey, you're going to be backstage. You're going to be interviewing so-and-so. I don't remember who it was at the time, but I think it was like Pink or somebody like that. And they were like, hey, you're going to interview her. And like, I almost started getting emotional because it's like, I used to be out there in the crowd cheering at everybody else. And then to be back here getting to interview these people who I look up to and I listen to their music and I've always wanted to interview them. That was pretty special. That was cool. And in particular, when I remember really feeling that when I interviewed the Backstreet Boys, because when I was home in high school and junior high watching TRL, I remember Carson Daly would interview them and I loved them and I listened to all their songs and I had all their albums. And then I remember Backstreet Boys, the first time I interviewed them, they were at Ravinia actually.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I went backstage and I interviewed them at Ravinia. And I just remember they were so kind. And that stuck out to me as a moment like, oh my gosh, that was so cool. Like, and it was like, what is my life? Like, that is awesome that I just got to do that. But yeah, I mean, some other memorable people. I mean, there's been so many. I mean, Britney Spears was another cool one. Drake was awesome. I really liked Drake because he was at the time, he was very open about sort of his feelings towards Rihanna and how he really, really liked her. And so he was pretty open about that. I remember Pitbull's another one who I always say was so cool. Jennifer Lopez is like one of my all-time favorites. Yeah, I mean, John Travolta just a few weeks ago, that was really cool.
Yeah. My generation remembers him in Greece. I mean, like way back. And he was, oh my gosh.
Oh, I know.
I was like in elementary school.
Yeah. No, he was really nice. And, a lot of people are like, well, what about like, who's the worst? And to be honest, I haven't had a ton of really bad ones just because most of the people are in a setting where they're promoting something and they want to promote it. And so I haven't really had too many bad ones. We were once on the air and Diddy wouldn't start the interview, until he had his bowl of cereal. He refused to do it until he had cereal because it was mornings and he wanted to eat. And so he was waiting for somebody. We had to wait for somebody to get him cereal. So that was the memorable one. But yeah, I would say those are probably some of the highlights.
Yeah. And I think I'm glad to hear that you don't typically have people that are kind of cranky, but my heart does go out to, I mean, I'm sure people cry me a river about these celebrities, but when I see someone at the airport or something, I usually just ignore it because I always feel that they have so little privacy, and granted they signed up for this and that's part of the package of fame, and they get lots of money and they get free stuff sent to them all the time. But I always think, gosh, there's a price to pay. They don't have their privacy. They can't just walk through the airport without, and nowadays, I mean, it used to be an autograph, but now people want selfies with them. And I mean, my heart kind of goes out to them. So when I hear that someone's been crabby, you hear, oh, I saw someone pitching it. I just think, gosh, we don't quite understand what that life is. And you probably see a window into that life more in your position now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm always torn on that one because I agree with you. I think, I'm one of these people, I want to kind of pry a little bit because I'm just so curious. And so,
well, it's your job too. I mean, it's your job.
It's my job.
Yeah.
And so I do feel when I see somebody out at the airport or just in wherever I am randomly, I can't help myself. I feel the compulsion to go up and to ask for a picture of some sort. I think too, just because I want to share my excitement with all my followers because I know they like entertainment and celebrities. I haven't had too many. Most people are very gracious with that and they really take the time. I remember one in particular was I was at, I want to say it was the Billboard Awards, I think, or was it the MTV Award? I don't know. It was one of them in LA and the show just ended and I was going back to the hotel and Mark Cuban was in the gift shop at the hotel with one of his kids and I'm obsessed with him. And I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. I was like, I have to go up to him. And so I went up and he was so nice and he took a selfie and I think I tweeted the selfie at him and he tweeted me back and then he ended up following me and that's like my big, every now and again I check, I'm like, is Mark Cuban still following me? And sure enough he is. And it's just, but I think, I don't know, I try, to your point, I agree with you. And so I try not to, if I do that, I try not to, and I also try to read the room. Like if they seem like they're having a bad day or if it's it's just not going to happen, then I'll definitely pass. But for the most part, if it seems like they'll be cool with it, I'll go up to them and I'll say something. But I try to keep it very short and very brief and just get the picture and kind of leave them alone. But, it's just kind of a fun way to, I think kind of also too, just especially people are around town, like let people know, hey, oh my gosh, like the Jonas Brothers were in town pretty much all week last week. And they were, taking pictures with everybody and they were everywhere. And I think it's kind of like a fun way for people to connect, like, oh, I met them and this is what they were doing. And
I think mostly I always hear, like, so my husband is the exact opposite of me. If he sees someone, he wants to go right up and shake their hand and tell them how much he appreciates their work. It's funny you bring up Mark Cuban, because I had a Mark Cuban connection just recently. I went to this tiny little school, Judson University out in Elgin, Northwest suburbs. And it's a small little school. But anyway, one of our alum connected with Mark Cuban. He lives in Washington and does political kind of stuff, and randomly connected with Mark Cuban. And Mark Cuban agreed to come to our tiny little school and speak for free as like a fundraiser for our tiny little school. It was so kind of him, so nice of him. And so my husband has this business, and so we were one of the sponsors. So because we were sponsors, we got to have a quick little tiny, like 30 seconds of a photo op. And he could not have been kinder, and big smile for everybody, and then had a great talk. And just the fact that he would fly in and speak for free, which I'm sure his speaking fees, what he could normally get for a speech, I was just really struck by that. And so it's nice to see even above and beyond kind of kindness that happens. And I think probably more so than not.
Yeah, that's my experience. And that's so cool to hear that. Yeah. And I think too, your husband's approach is good, because I do think also it is the way in which you approach them, provided, if you're running up, freaking out, screaming, they might take that a little bit the wrong way. But
Right.
yeah, to go up in like a respectful way and say, hey, I love what you do, or your work's touched me in this way. I do think they'll have a better response to that for sure.
Yeah. If you're single, you've likely heard it all. You've been told you're too picky, you should just get on another dating app, or that you're not trying hard enough. And you're probably really tired of hearing those messages, because I know I was when I was single for all those years. Which is why I felt the need to bring another perspective to the dating relationship self-help genre. Single is the new black, don't wear white till it's right, is my take on what the single life can be if we refuse to settle, we know that we're worth an extraordinary relationship, and we refuse to fall prey to single shaming. Trust me, it is a different self-help book. Check it out on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, or on my website, www.drkaren.me, DRKARIN.me. What kind of advice would you give for women who, and maybe not necessarily just in journalism or in your field, but just in general, when you think about young women today, like you mentioned a little bit about being true to your word and hustling, not being afraid to have a vision that maybe they can't even see. It's funny because my career has been, I was first a therapist for several years in Chicago South Side, and I worked with kids in the child welfare system. And then I went back and got my doctorate, and then I was a professor for 10 years. And again, in Chicago, and then in the suburbs. And now I have a podcast. Well, podcasts weren't even around when I was in college. So
Right.
Sometimes we have to be open to having a vision develop and then going after it, which is what I love about your story. There wasn't a Showbiz Shelly, now there is. And I just love that you created that. You just created your vision and you went for it. Yeah. Any words for women who are listening, how to make it happen in their careers?
Yeah. I think you're right. Cause like I said, I watched the entertainment TV shows like TRL. I kind of had set, I was like, I'm going to be an entertainment TV reporter. I'm going to be on TV doing entertainment stuff. And that was always what I kind of thought the ultimate place would be, where I would be covering these celebrities and covering the movie premieres and doing all that. But when the radio opportunity happened, I was like, you know what, I might as well. It'll get me, it'll be a step to that. And what I realized is like, this is it. Like I'm creating the opportunity I wanted just by simply sort of making the contacts and reaching out to people and saying, hey, look, the way that I got a lot of these interviews is by formulating relationships with, movie studios and publicists. And it wasn't just something that sort of fell in my lap. I had to really reach out and make the connections. And I do agree with you. I think you have to be open that you can have your goal and your dream, but I think the universe kind of also has a plan for us or whatever you believe in. And you kind of have to be open to whatever can kind of come your way. And right, because when I first started in radio, I remember we got a text line, and that was a really big deal. Like, oh, people can text us while we're on the radio. And over the course of my career, I mean, now, people are tweeting and sending Instagram messages, and it's totally a different climate, and it's changed. And I mean, for those who are specifically looking to do media or entertainment, I always say the good thing is now you have so many platforms that you don't even necessarily have to start on radio or on TV. You can have your own TV show on Instagram, or you can do it on YouTube. You can kind of have your own little channel and kind of work your way up from there. And again, I would say, don't be afraid to start off small. Don't worry about how many people are following you or watching. If you're consistent and you have good content to share, people will eventually find you. I think, again, just for me, consistency is a really big deal. I even find that with, interns we've worked with in the past, or even just people who, whether it's a publicist or somebody who I even connect with for my job, just as a contact who helps me out with interviews or whatever it might be, I find it just makes my life easier when the person is consistent and they follow through on their word and they say, hey, look, I'll send you an email in a week with a follow-up if this isn't a good time. And then they do. Or if sometimes I'll miss an email and then they'll follow up with a call. And I know not a lot of people call and everyone hates calling. I love calling. So it makes me realize, oh, okay, this person's really serious. So, I mean, I would say those are kind of the main things, but also just in terms of like, if people are listening and they're maybe in high school and they're looking to go to college. And I always say an internship is a great way to go, because at least you can get your foot in the door and see if you like it, and you can see if you like the environment. Because I know a lot of people who I went to school with, and they thought they really wanted to do TV, and then they did an internship and they realized like, oh, actually, no, I don't want to be here. Like, and that's okay to change your mind too. And to think, even though you always had your heart set on this, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay.
Yeah. And that's valuable. An internship that confirms for you that you don't want to head in that direction. That's a valuable semester of internship, even if you were kind of miserable the entire time. I mean, I'm the same as you. I always encourage people, go to college. Some people say, well, I don't even know what I want to do, but just go there, get into the environment. You'll start taking classes. You'll figure out, oh, that one kind of lit me up. That one left me flat. Okay, now, and you'll have these opportunities. And then when you have those opportunities in those real world circumstances, that will help you really figure out. But also, like you're saying, be flexible, because we don't even know what's coming down the pike. I mean,
that is true, right? Uh-huh.
Yeah. Like you're saying, I mean, now people can have, wasn't Justin Bieber, Usher found him on YouTube or something like that? I mean, so there's so many ways to put their heart out there. So if people have a talent or a dream, just put it out there, because if no one picks it up and it didn't go big time, well, that wasn't meant to happen for that person. But it doesn't mean that what they're doing didn't touch a couple people.
That's right.
If I looked at like my podcast is worthless until I have millions and millions of followers and listeners. Well, no, that's not true. As long as there's one or two people, which of course with the beauty of social media, and I'm sure you get this too. If I get one or two little DMs like, hey, that was really what I needed to hear today. I needed that encouragement today. It's worth all the effort if one or two people are touched.
100%. And also, because if you think about it, right. So if that one person DMs you and says, hey, your podcast really touched me today. I mean, the way I like to think about it is, imagine how many people you come into contact with daily. And then if your podcast touched that one person, imagine how many people they come into contact with, and they could make somebody else's day. So even though it doesn't feel like it feels like it just touched one person, it really does sort of exponentially, it kind of exponentially grows, and it'll exponentially make people feel better, even though it feels like it's just that one person you're touching. And so even though you don't have maybe a major platform like some of these celebrities with millions and millions of followers who can tweet anything and get hundreds of thousands of retweets and likes, I don't know that that's what it's about necessarily. I think it is about touching those few people, because imagine on a daily basis how many people we interact with. And it's kind of like that thing, if you kind of, do one good thing, maybe if you like buy that extra coffee for somebody unexpectedly at like a Starbucks or something. It'll make their day. And then think of how great their day is. And, maybe they're a teacher and they'll go into school and all their students will feel that warmth from their day. I mean, it can multiply in lots of different ways. So I totally agree with you on that. I think that's really important.
Yeah. And that's a really good way of looking at it, that there is a ripple effect. Even if it's only one person that reaches out, that just by them being encouraged, they are going to naturally spread that encouragement throughout their day. So there is a ripple effect. And I think we all need to remember that, especially like you said, in this age where we've always known that celebrities have their platform and they can influence, but now we have all these influencers and we can always look at, oh gosh, that so-and-so has more followers than me. And those comparison games, that is one of the reasons that psych research shows that social media consumption is typically related to depression and anxiety. Because if we're not careful, if we don't just go, hey, I'm here to share and hope to encourage, or for what you're doing to hope to bring a spark of joy to someone, if we go at it with I'm trying to compete with this person over here, or I want to get to the number of followers as this person over here, then we play those comparison games, which is related to all kinds of horrible stuff psychologically. So we don't want to do that. We want to be about what we're doing and keep that comparison out of it. But that's not easy. So it's one of the things I talk about a lot on the program, because I want to encourage us all to use social media for good, not for evil.
I know. Yeah, no, trust me. It is a struggle, but I think, because even I have that struggle. It's like, oh my gosh, why did that picture only get like that many? But then I remind myself, there's always going to be people doing better than you, and or better. I don't even know if that's like a term I should use, but there's always going to be people with more followers, or, and then there'll always be people who, the comparison is silly, because you can compare yourself to anybody and always find reasons why you are doing worse. Or, on that note, you can always find reasons why you're, why you're happy with what you're doing. So, and I think it's important to focus more on the latter. So
agreed. Yeah. And it has to be it's intentional, because there's so many opportunities to compare nowadays, much more. I mean, I can go compare myself to anybody at any time of day with this device that's in my hand at all times. So we have the opportunity to throw ourselves into that arena. And so we have to be really intentional. I just had this girls' weekend with my college roommates. We've been trying to get together even more frequently the last several years. And so we do a girls' trips. And we were just talking about that very thing, not necessarily about comparison, but about how each day to make that intentional commitment to look for the good, to look for what the sun is shining and to be thankful for that, to look for the joy in the midst of, because every day there's going to be struggles. There's going to be, someone's sick. A kid is stressing out. My friends have kids, so the kids are stressing them out, right? They're worried about this one, and this one's going down this direction. And so there's always the opportunity to focus on the bad or focus on the good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in what you focus on will continue to expand. And right, to your point, you can always find something that's going crappy in your life and you don't like it. And so if you continue to focus on it, it'll just keep getting bigger. But we're all guilty of it. It's hard. That's how we're conditioned. It's hard. So, going back to the idea of, just kind of being genuine and authentic to yourself. And if your goal is to touch maybe hundreds, thousands of lives, you'll get there. Just keep doing what you like to do. And I think it will happen for you eventually.
And I love that even though you are an introvert, and that may have been something that could have been a stumbling block for you along the way. Like, wait a minute, I'm an introvert. How am I going to have this platform where I'm talking to people who are kind of intimidating and I'm going to have to call people and make connections? And so I love that you acknowledged who you are and still said, but I'm going to go for it.
Yeah, when I tell people that, they're like, oh my gosh, really? And I think there is this perception, and a lot of people I know in radio they're very outgoing and they love being center of attention, and they love, going to lots of events and being in front of people. And that has not always been my thing. Like, that's something I've had to grow accustomed to, and it's something I've had to work at and to practice. And it's something where I have had to practice even knowing sort of my own limits. Like, okay, I know if I take on this interview today, it's going to be too much for me. And I don't know how much even your listeners know, but introverts, like, I get more my energy from being alone, and I kind of have to be by myself to recharge. And And so for me, it's setting those boundaries a lot of times, like, okay, I need to make sure that even though I have this event, then I need to make sure I don't have that much the next day, because if I don't do that, then I just get drained. I get really drained. And then I'm super, I was always shy growing up. And so I'm sometimes amazed at myself that like I've come this far and that I've, done some of the things I've done. I mean, I remember when I first started, I was asked, I think it was the cast, I want to say of the Hunger Games, came to like a mall. It was like a Woodfield Mall, I think. And there were, I think they said like 30,000 kids showed up. And it was like this crazy where I had to interview them. I remember being so terrified, and I almost get to a point where it's like, it's almost so terrifying. I can't think about it anymore. And so I just am like, you know what, whatever happens, happens. And I just like, let it go, because I just can't even care that much. And it always turns out to be fine. It's always fine. But I always do get a little nervous. It takes me sometimes a little bit of time to like ramp myself up and get to that space where it's like, okay, I've got to go talk to these people, or I've got to reach out to this person, or I've got to do this interview. And I think a lot of people are surprised by that. It doesn't really come as naturally to me as some other people.
But I'm so glad you shared that. I had a psychologist on recently talking about social anxiety. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that a lot of people with anxiety they think that someone like you, it just comes naturally. They think that you're just always on and always bubbly, and it's the easiest thing in the world for you to talk to people who are world famous. And that's very rarely the case. Does anyone have it that easy? Even when I was a professor and I would do speeches at conferences, and I've got a speech coming up this weekend at a conference in New York, and I've spoken in front of people for my entire career pretty much, and I still will get nervous. I mean, so what I love is just, it's not that you don't have those feelings. It's just that you do a lot of self-talk. You tell yourself, it's going to be okay. Take a deep breath. It's going to be all right. And, I felt like this before and I've gotten through it. And you show yourself by pushing yourself to go through with what is scary and what is giving you anxiety and butterflies. But then once you do it, you realize, almost like a muscle, like, okay, it's not going to be as hard next time. And you show yourself you can do it. And that's where self-esteem comes from. I mean, they think that people have self-esteem, they're just born with this great feeling. No, it's just that they keep pushing themselves to try things that challenge them, and then they show themselves they can do it.
Yeah. And, and I hope that it does, I hope that, maybe it will kind of impact, maybe a handful of people listening, just because I do think that, right. I do think a lot of people, they don't really expect that from a radio personality. And I think It is important for them to know that, just because, I think a lot of people can relate to me. Like, even though you might not be on the radio, maybe you're in a workplace where you have to give a presentation or something. And I get that a lot from people, is that people say, Shelly, even though, I didn't really, I wasn't there sitting in the room with you when you were talking about, I don't know, like whatever radio topic you were talking about, like I still kind of, I understood, like I could feel what you meant. And I'm like you, like I always try to see, glass half full, and like, I'm always the optimist. And I think that does kind of come with the fact that I have anxiety, and I can get anxiety. And so it is important for me to kind of look at, the positive thing. But I think it is important that people know that, it doesn't come that easy. And it is something that I have to work on. And, I have been for a lot of years. And I think it is just sort of, I think a lot of people can relate to it, because I think, there are a lot of people like me who listen to the radio. Like I remember at times, when I did full blown mornings, I would say, hey, I stayed in on a Friday night and didn't do anything. Well, maybe for some that'd be looked down upon. Like, what do you mean you weren't going out and having, didn't go party? And I was like, no, but I think that's a lot of people. I think, a lot of people can, they have that same experience. And I think it's important to know that, even though like that's sort of, I'm proud in a lot of ways that I have made it this far, sort of being that way, maybe not what you'd expect from a typical radio personality, because I think it shows you don't have to necessarily fit a certain formula or be this certain type of way to fit like your dream job or your ideal job, that you can kind of make it work in a way that works for you.
Yeah, I love that. I think it just really ties into the theme that we've been talking about for the entire conversation, is realizing that a movie star is more relatable than we ever thought because they are struggling in their personal life with their dating and relationship,
Right.
or for someone like you who has this beautiful smile and you just are up there and there's so much charisma, and someone would obviously think that just comes so naturally to you. And yet here you're going, no, I have to do what we all have to do, which is try to figure out ways to calm my nerves, calm my fears. And so I think it's really helpful, just these kind of conversations, to remind all of us that whether you're a movie star, whether you're Showbiz Shelly, or whether you're someone listening today, life is challenging. It is. And we make choices with what we can. We can't choose what happens to us, but we can choose how we respond. And that's really what you've been sharing today, and thank you so much, Shelly. Is there anything going on that you would like to do a little plug for or promote? Anything coming down the pike, or if not, how should people find you?
Oh my gosh, what are we doing? Well, I will say Kiss FM we have our Jingle Ball coming up. So you're going to want to get tickets. We're making the big announcement. Who's going to be there. So that's probably the big thing coming up for the holidays. Yeah. But yeah, if people want to find me, you can find me. I'm at Showbiz Shelly on all social media. So that's Shelly, Shelly. Yeah, I love connecting with people. So if you can in any way relate to this, or you need anything, always feel free to reach out.
I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and you've really given a lot of great ideas for women to make it happen in their career, whether their personality seems like it's a great fit for their career or whether the dream just seems like too impossible. You've really given some tangible steps for how to make it happen. So thank you, Shelly.
Oh, good. I hope so. Thank you so much. You're awesome. Thank you.
The Love and Life hack for this week is, let's take a page from Shelly's playbook and make it happen in our careers. And don't let anything, shyness, anxiety, or an introverted personality stand in our way. Also, I wanted to let you know that I've recently added a new feature to my website to help me better answer your questions. I used to respond via email or DM, but some of your questions are very personal and deep, and I felt I wanted to give them more in-depth responses. So in order to do this, you can now record your questions in an audio file, and then I'll answer them in a bonus for my besties special podcast episode just for those who join the Love and Life family by signing up for my email list. This week, the first 2 bonus episodes will be sent out, so please join us. Take charge of your thoughts. Take charge of your life. As always, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for subscribing to the podcast and sharing episodes with others. I truly appreciate all your support. And until next time, make it a great week.
Love and Life is produced by Tim May and host and executive producer, Dr. Karen Anderson-Abril.